Welcome all to the mid-year edition of the C64 Quickload, a concise rundown of the games released during the first half of 2026 that I've got a chance to play through. Let's check them out. Amirun and the Alien Beer Suckers is a fixed-screen arcade shooter in the spirit of Puyan and its C64 descendant Pigs from Space. The setup is gloriously absurd. Aliens have detected a free beer signal and descended to raid the party, and it's your job to pick them off with a crossbow from a building rope. The crossbow's one-shot cooldown is a defining mechanic, and it takes a round or two to click. But stick with it, and a satisfying layer of strategy emerges around shot placement and composure under pressure. The beer retrieval phase between waves, where you sprint unarmed across open ground with the mothership charging overhead, is a smart injection of variety. Amirun knows exactly what it is and delivers it with polish and personality. Axis is a stealth evasion game with a brutal twist. There's no fighting back. Your only option is to run, collect keycards and reach the exit before the aliens hunt you down. Presentation is solid with a SID track that perfectly drives the tension and alien screeches that spike your nerves at exactly the right moments. The 10-sector difficulty curve is well judged too. The controls do feel a touch sluggish though, which matters in a game this precise. That said, Axis earns its tensions honestly. Being chased down with the exit in sight is generally exhilarating, and when it clicks, it's the kind of white-knuckle experience the C64 homebrew scene does well. Bricks and Balls is a breakout-style arcade game with a charming twist. The bricks themselves are sprites and characters lifted from the classic C64 games, framed as corrupted memory cells on a failing flash drive. It's a concept that earns an immediate smile on the title screen. Unfortunately, the gameplay struggles to match the premise. Ball physics feel floaty and collision angles can seem arbitrary. A critical problem in a genre where reading trajectories is the entire skill expression. Level design adds further frustration, with endgame moments that drag as the last few bricks bounce unpredictably for far longer than feels intentional. The love for the C64 history is evident throughout, and the concept alone makes this worth a glance. But until the physics get tightened up, Bricks and Balls is a harder sell than it deserves to be. Broken Crown is a procedurally generated roguelike dungeon crawler that draws on the structure of classic 80s adventures. You explore a persistent overworld before descending into randomly generated corridors, navigating them turn by turn in search of crown fragments needed to confront a final threat lurking in the depths. The Raycaster dungeon view and the overworld tiles are basic but carry an old school charm that suits the game well. The absence of any in-game music leaves the atmosphere a little sparse, but what I really appreciate is that Broken Crown gives you an actual objective to work towards. This isn't a score chaser, it's a game with a genuine sense of purpose and destination. The purposeful design, combined with procedurally generation and a no-save structure that demands full commitment each setting, makes for a remarkably compelling loop. There's easily hours of play here for anyone willing to give it the time it deserves. Bubble Buddies is a 100-level standalone campaign hack of Bubble Bobble, built on the polished engine from the remastered and Lost Cave editions. It's not a port tweak, it's a ground-up redesign of the level campaign with fresh stages and technical refinements throughout. The jump to 20x20 trap monster bubbles give enemies a visual pop that makes previous versions look noticeably dated, and a colour RAM fix eliminates the legacy glitches and trails that have always nagged at the experience. The level design is a real star though. Filler stages are gone, replaced with layouts that reward genuine strategy. Lost Cave and Remastered are technical triumphs, but Bubble Buddies is a superior experience. Polished, challenging without being frustrating, and stunning on real hardware. This is now the definitive way to play the Bubble formula on the C64. Chrome Horizon is a horizontal shoot-'em-up across 4 sci-fi environments, with a satellite system you can deploy alongside your ship for supplementary firepower. On the surface, it has the makings of a solid blaster. Parallax scrolling, boss encounters, weapon pickups, and smooth sprite work throughout. The problem is everything underneath. Enemy fire exists, but is channeled through patterns so narrow they are trivially easy to sidestep, meaning entire levels pass without any meaningful threat to your ship. The satellite mechanic suffers from the same fate. With danger so minimal, its defensive capability never once becomes necessary. Boss fights compound it further. Their static patterns easily nullified by finding a safe spot and holding fire. As a commercial release, Chrome Horizon is a hard sell. The technical foundations are generally solid, but a shoot 'em up that never makes you feel in danger is a difficult thing to recommend. Komchinko is a pachinko-style arcade title that strips the formula right back. Drop balls into a pin-filled playfield, watch them ricochet throughout pegs and pockets, and let the numbers climb. Coloured balls and pegs trigger cascading special effects from the ball duplication and value multipliers through to pocket bonuses that stack in increasingly chaotic and satisfying ways. The visuals are clean but basic, and this is firmly a short burst game rather than a marathon session title. What elevates it beyond a simple numbers go up experience is the upgrade discovery loop. Working out what each coloured effect does and how they interact proves generally compelling. The achievement system seals it with over 100 unlockables and extra balls earned through play, giving real structure to what could easily have felt aimless. Komchinko is exactly what it sets out to be, a low pressure, high satisfaction drop-in title that's surprisingly easy to keep returning to. Christian and the Lost Crystals is a maze-style puzzle platformer set deep in a flooded mine. Young Christian must recover his scattered crystal collection across 3 distinct locations, solving gate puzzles with magical cubes while navigating rising lava, floodwater, and over 60 enemy types per zone. On the visual front, this is a genuine showpiece. 3 richly detailed environments full of animation and colour that look even better in motion than in screenshots. The jumping mechanic is the stumbling block, requiring fire then direction rather than the instinctive reverse, which can feel broken until it clicks. Once it does though, the measured pacing and methodical puzzle design start to shine. As one of the few commercial releases in this roundup, the production quality makes a strong case for itself. Christian and the Lost Crystals is a patient, rewarding game for those willing to meet it on its own terms. Dandelion is a dark fantasy action platformer built using the shoot 'em up construction kit. Yes, the shooter engine repurposed for Metroidvania style exploration. You play a mercenary storming a demon academy in Gothic Transylvania, collecting items and spells to unlock new areas as you push deeper in. Visually, it sells the brooding atmosphere well, and the exploration structure is generally satisfying. The puzzle logic is coherent and the progression feels earned. The shoot 'em up construction kit roots do show though, with floaty jumps and enemy AI that's easy to exploit. Even so, the ambition here is hard not to admire. The engine has been pushed further than most would attempt, and the result is one of the more distinctive homebrew platformers to land on the C64 in recent memory. Escape from Petsky Planet is a first-person shooter built around an 8-bit ray-casting engine inspired by Wolfenstein 3D, a genuine technical first for the C64. You're locked in a dungeon on a remote planet, navigating 5 floors of alien robots, locked doors, hidden passages, and a treasure hunt for keys and gold before you can escape. The ray-casting perspective work is impressive for the hardware, and the tactical combat rewards careful shot placement over simply charging in. The grayscale Petsky presentation is a double-edged sword though, technically striking but generally disorientating, making it hard to distinguish interactive walls from plain scenery at a glance, and an in-game map would have gone a long way. Despite its quirks, this one kept pulling me back. The treasure hunt design gives every floor real purpose, multiple difficulty modes and Gold Rush add replay value, and the sheer technical ambition makes it easy to overlook the rough edges. Evil Spirit is a first-person adventure horror game spanning 4 chapters and over 150 locations. No mid-chapter loading required. Stranded after an evil force is unleashed from a mountain, you'll explore, solve puzzles, and fight your way through a real-time combat system that pits you against up to 3 enemies at once across near, medium, and far ranges. Visually and sonically, this is a genuine achievement. Atmospheric first-person environments and a SID soundtrack that builds dread with real purpose. The puzzle design deserves equal praise. Its solutions rooted in sound logic rather than obscure leaps the adventure genre is notorious for. The menu-driven interface is the friction point, with interactions that too often demand extra clicks that serve no obvious purpose and never quite feel intuitive. Stick with it though, and Evil Spirit delivers a compelling, substantial adventure. The unfolding mystery keeps pulling you forward, and 4 meaty chapters make this one of the most ambitious C64 homebrew releases in recent memory. Flat Lane is a 2.5D formula racing game in the spirit of the earliest arcade classics like Pole Position. You are Paul Pitstop, racing Formula 64 against two named rivals across 3 tracks, with fuel and car damage to manage along the way. The pit stop system is the real standout. Choosing when to repair, refuel, or push the car harder than it can handle adds a genuine layer of tactical thinking. The SID soundtrack is excellent too. The racing itself is the weakest link though, with corners offering little real challenge and a track variety that's thin at best. Flat Lane is an honest, well-presented effort, and the pit stop mechanic alone makes it worth a look. But without a stronger sense of speed and competition, its limitations show before too long. Gravity Duck 64 is a puzzle platformer ported to the C64 from its Flash game origins. The hook is simple. Rather than jumping, your duck flips gravity to walk on floors and ceilings, navigating 40 levels to reach a golden egg. The high-res visuals are immediately striking, and the gravity flip controls are tight and responsive, which matters in a game this precise. The boppy SID tune fits the tone well too. Background variety is thin though, and the later levels start to feel samey as a result. Gravity Duck 64 is a charming, well-executed port that delivers a solid focused play session. Don't go in expecting deep puzzle designs, but for what it is, it does the job cleanly. Gravity Snake is a puzzle game that takes the classic snake formula and bends it to the rules of physics. You're guiding a snake through 20 self-contained chambers, collecting fruit and reaching the exit. But constant downward pull means every move must account for where the momentum will take you next, not just where you're going. It takes a level or two for the mechanic to truly click. But when it does, the satisfaction of working with the physics rather than against them is real. Infinite lives remove any sting from the failure, keeping the experience feeling exploratory rather than punishing. The puzzle concepts feel distinct from one another too, with the better chambers showing genuine ingenuity. The only complaint is that 20 levels simply isn't enough. When a puzzle game leaves you wanting more rather than relief to be done, there's a sign it's doing something right. This episode is sponsored by Pixel Memories. If you're into retro gaming or fighting games, you need to check out their custom-built arcade sticks and leverless controllers. Pixel Memories designs incredible, one-of-a-kind hardware featuring stunning multicolour 3D printed enclosures and textured retro artwork inspired by classic arcade hits. Their controllers offer ultra-low latency and work seamlessly across PC, Mr. FPGA and retro setups. I got to evaluate their product firsthand when they sent me across this custom-made C64 arcade controller setup. This beefy setup looks impressive with a high-quality control stick and 6 buttons that are mapped to fire, up and spacebar on the bottom, and fire 1, 2 and 3 along the top. The controller is very comfortable to use on a desktop, and the controls are very precise for most types of game genres. Though those of you who love the firmness and responsiveness of a TAC2 joystick will probably want to upgrade this setup to include a kit that will make the travel and switch activation much shorter and faster, and a heavier spring will make it firmer. I've been really enjoying the convenience of the extra buttons and love the art decal that has been put together for this unit. Whether you want a pre-built custom controller or a unique commission of your own, head over to Pixel Memories webshop to elevate your setup. Grid Locker is a falling block puzzle game best described as Tetris meets Pipe Dream. Rather than clearing lines, you're connecting networks of pipe blocks together, and it's generally an original concept for the C64 puzzle scene. The controls are responsive and well thought out, with a hold function, soft drop and a ghost piece that all add real tactical bite. The core mechanic has depth too. Unfortunately, the visuals are sparse and personality free, and the in-game music actively grates, both significant shortcomings in a genre where atmosphere matters. It's worth noting this is still beta and the foundations are solid enough to build on, but right now Grid Locker feels like a game of good ideas waiting for the execution to catch up. Hippo Fruiter is a jungle platformer starring a hippopotamus navigating 20 levels of fruit collection, lever puzzles and hazard avoidance. Snakes, spiders, bats and roaming fruit guards all standing between you and the great lemon boss encounter waiting at the end. The controls are the clear highlight, tight, responsive and precise in a way that makes every jump and dodge feel fair. The presentation is colourful and readable without being particularly memorable. The problem is the level design, which leans almost entirely on predictable linear enemy patterns that offer very little genuine challenge across 20 stages. A handful of the later bat encounters and the occasional switch puzzle hit at a more engaging game that never quite materialises. Hippo Fruta is technically competent but runs out of ideas long before it runs out of levels. Impossible Mission 3 sees Special Agent 4125 return to take down Dr. Adam Bender once and for all. It's a massive 512k cartridge release that expands the classic search and evade formula with new tools, interactive environments, and over 30 digitised speech samples. The graphical uplift hits exactly the right balance, modern polish without losing the iconic look, and the remastered SID soundtrack is superb. The new repeater gun is a star addition, shifting gameplay from pure avoidance into genuine stun and search strategy, with just enough ammo to keep the resource management meaningful. Hardline fans of the original may bemoan the fixed room layouts and sound effects that don't quite hit the mark, but for the rest of us, Impossible Mission 3 is simply a brilliantly balanced, accessible love letter to the 8-bit era, a genuine highlight of 2026. Infestation 2 Mystery of the Crystal Moon is a platform shooter sequel that sends the galactic sheriff to a distant crystal moon to shut down an illegal mining operation. 4 distinctive zones, surface, crystal caves, refinery and lost city, each bring their own visual palette, enemy roster and a 5-weapon arsenal that generally challenges how you play. The visual leap from the original is immediately striking. Larger character scaling, full multi-directional scrolling, and 4 zones with real personality makes this feel like a more cinematic, more expansive experience. The pacing is tighter and more propulsive too. Each level a focused sprint with a clear forward momentum rather than the methodical grind of the first game. As a commercial release, this is among the most polished C64 platform shooters in recent memory. Infestation 2 doesn't just build on its predecessor, it surpasses it in almost every respect. Marshy and Phoebe is a puzzle platformer starring a pair of guinea pigs on a fruit collecting quest across 5 themed worlds. Countryside, laboratory, mines, mountain passes, and a pirate ship, each packed with levers, lifts, minecarts, and cannon triggers to manipulate. The puzzle design is the standout, contraptions layer up naturally across the stages, and the difficulty curve is well judged. Up to player mode is on offer too, though the single player character swap mechanic toggling between the duo via the spacebar takes a round or two to feel natural. The SID work is the weak link, with the short and disconnected snippets where sustained composition would have done far more for the atmosphere. Marshy and Phoebe is cheerful, clean and generally enjoyable while it lasts. The brevity is the real disappointment. There's a good game here that simply ends before it fully hits its stride. Rings is a top-down action game loosely inspired by Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. You're a hobbit collecting rings across 4 maps, with the one ring itself as your key mechanic. Activate it to turn invisible to enemies at the cost of draining your life. It sounds great on paper, but the execution is where it falls apart. The one ring doesn't grant stealth, it just freezes enemies in place. Combined with rigid patrol patterns, sparse maps, and almost no sound, there's very little here to hold your attention. The concept generally had potential, and I wanted to like this one, but as it stands, Rings is a missed opportunity that will struggle to keep you engaged past the first 2 minutes. Rise of Babylon is a turn-based city building strategy game set in ancient Mesopotamia. You inherit Babylon's throne and have 60 rounds to grow its population, balancing housing, grain income and gold against a finite grid and the constant threat of invasion. The early game shines as the system clicks into place, and watching your settlement grow more imposing adds real visual payoff. The defense mechanic is a blind spot though, with no clear prompt to build walls until raids are already underway. Rise of the Babylon's momentum does fade in the back half as challenge plateaus, but the first playthrough is a generally compelling ride, an ambitious and largely successful experiment for the C64. Slotshot is a fast-paced puzzle shooter set aboard a space colony in 2084. You're moving a cannon vertically, firing vaccine blocks into advancing crystalline columns. Complete a full column of 10 rows and it vanishes, cascading the rest to the right. 3 bullet types add a layer of tactical choice. The cascade mechanic is generally satisfying when it clicks, and the SID soundtrack helps carry off the sci-fi atmosphere. Visually though, it leans towards the basic side, and the difficulty curve is a real problem. Sluggish early levels followed by a sudden jarring speed spike that feels more like a brick wall than a ramp. Slot Shot has the bones of a good idea, and the cascade mechanic alone is worth experiencing, but without a more balanced difficulty curve, it's hard to see it holding your attention for long. Spider Maze 2 is an arcade maze game from the New Dimension. Frederick the Ball is back, racing through 16 spider-infested lairs to rescue his kidnapped girlfriend, collecting every diamond in each stage to buy her freedom. It's a polished, well-presented release with bright multicoloured sprites and a difficulty curve that earns its teeth from level 5 onwards. The SID soundtrack is well crafted, though the upbeat techno synth feel doesn't quite match the dungeon rescue atmosphere on screen. Spider Maze 2 is a confident step up from its predecessor, and the escalating challenge does a solid job of keeping you at the controls. Arcade maze fans should find plenty to like here. Superstar Chefs is a cooperative single-screen platformer set in Cocktail Land, where stolen secret recipes are scattered across a series of cartoon-style stages. You're stomping enemies, collecting fruit to unlock keys, and hunting hidden recipes to boost your final ranking, with a second player along for the ride if you want company. The presentation is polished and cheerful, with vibrant visuals and a SID soundtrack that fits the light-hearted tone well. The controls are tight too, with jumping and double jumping executing reliably. The problem is that double jump makes traversing each screen so effortless that any sense of platforming challenge quietly evaporates, and enemies rarely provide the tension to compensate. Superstar Chefs looks the part and plays smoothly, but a game that never really pushes back is hard to stay engaged with. The production quality is there, the spark just isn't. The Last Pumpkin is a single-screen arcade platformer set in a haunted castle. You're collecting bones and keys across 8 levels with a distinctive twist. Your character bounces constantly, leaving you to handle only horizontal movement. That bouncing mechanic is better implemented than it sounds, and the screen wrapping looping both horizontally and vertically adds a genuine tactical layer. Visually, it's clean and functional, though it doesn't push the hardware in any meaningful way. 8 levels is simply not enough content to leave a lasting impression, and the single-player experience starts to feel hollow well before the end. Competent and playable, but unlikely to stay in your disk drive for long. Tony Do It is a Sokoban-style puzzle game set in the treasure chambers of King Montezuma II. The objective is familiar: push crates onto the marked targets. But a pull mechanic activated with a fire button opens up additional tactical routes, and scorpions and wandering natives add time pressures by draining your clock on contact. The push and pull mechanic is the game's strongest card, well integrated into the level designs and used sensibly enough to add genuine depth without feeling like a gimmick. Visually it's average, functional rather than memorable, though the soundtrack fits the treasure chamber setting well. The longevity is a real limitation. Once the levels are solved, there's little pulling you back for a second run. Tony Do It is a competent, enjoyable puzzle game while it lasts. Genre fans will find a solid, if uninspiring, take on the formula, just don't expect it to linger once the final crate is placed. Traps and Gemstones is a flick-screen platformer set inside an ancient pyramid. You're a whip-cracking explorer descending into forgotten chambers, collecting keys, smashing vases, swimming subterranean passages, and working towards a boss encounter that draws on everything you've picked up along the way. Production is a genuine strength. Crisp, well-defined graphics with a consistent pyramid aesthetic that sits a cut above most homebrew releases. The exploration holds up too. Where it falls short is the challenge. Enemies and traps are predictable enough that the sense of danger never quite lands, and the puzzles rarely rise above the surface level. If you've played other Donor 80 releases, you'll know exactly what to expect. A polished, enjoyable adventure that's squarely aimed at the casual end of the spectrum. Solid, but unlikely to linger long in the memory. Trench Angle is a tower defense game with a persistent tech tree, a genre you simply don't encounter often on the C64. Waves of enemy shapes advance on your fortress, and 6 tower types ranging from arrow and lightning to blizzard and lasers are yours to build, upgrade and position using gold earned from defeated enemies. The layered progression is where it earns its stripes. In-level gold management combines with a separate meta-currency tech tree that carries upgrades across attempts. The catch is that the game expects you to fail levels deliberately to bank that currency, and nowhere does it tell you this. Without that knowledge, early losses feel like wasted effort rather than progress. Stick with it though, and Trench Angle reveals itself as one of the most strategically rewarding homebrew releases to land on the C64 in years. The barrier to entry is real, but so is the payoff on the other side. And that is a wrap on this episode. Hope you enjoyed the content. Until next time, bye for now.